We only had just over a week for our trip to Japan, so we focused on one particular area, which is highlighted on the map. We did actually get to see quite a few places in the short time that we were there. So after landing in Osaka, we quickly went on to Hiroshima. We had 3 nights there. Then we had one night each in 3 other locations before heading to Kyoto, where we had 3 nights to finish the trip. So as soon as we landed in Osaka, we got on the bullet train and headed to Hiroshima. It's about 250k between Osaka and Hiroshima, but because the bullet train runs at about 300 kilometers an hour, it only took us less than 90 minutes for the trip. Hiroshima is where the first atomic bomb was dropped at the end of the Second World War. And what we're looking at here is a memorial arch in the Peace Gardens in the centre of the city. And we're looking through that to what is known as the Atomic Bomb Dome. And it was a convention centre that was full of people when the bomb dropped. Everybody was killed. And the building's been left in the condition that it was in immediately after the bomb exploded, just as a reminder to everybody of what actually happened. There's a museum that we went through, and it's the quietest museum I've ever been in. It was packed, people filing through, looking at all the exhibits and the photos and reading the information. And it was very challenging reading what had actually happened and seeing the aftermath of the bomb. So yeah, not a very uplifting experience that day, but important that we went to see it. After the destruction caused by the bomb, there had to be a lot of rebuilding of Hiroshima, and I didn't actually find it that attractive a place in terms of the buildings, but there were some lovely park areas, including this one. And with it being spring, it was cherry blossom time, and we were lucky that the weather was very good for the couple of days that we were in Hiroshima, and we found some really nice areas of the cherry blossom. So after a couple of days in Hiroshima, we drove down to Yamaguchi and stayed in a very traditional Japanese hotel where we slept on futons on the floor, and this was our room. You can see the very old dial-up telephone in the background if you look closely behind Vasi. And we wore kimonos as we moved around the hotel. So we had a very formal dinner, which was extensive and also very tasty. And then we had a similar meal, has to be said, for breakfast. So that was a bit different, but I guess it was a good start to the day. We then drove on to Hagi on the northern coast via a national park which had some extensive cave systems. We went into 3. The first one was by far the most spectacular and the biggest, and was very well set out in terms of pathways and lighting and English language. So that was really enjoyable. We'd been to a few temples already by this point, and I wasn't that impressed visually with the temples, but this one was impressive, and obviously the cherry blossom helped. But yeah, it was. Some of the buildings were pretty spectacular, and what you've got here is this huge area of. It was basically a graveyard for the clan that used to run the temple.
we're in a place called Hagi now on the coast, and this is a very initially average looking pond. But it's actually really interesting. There's all these, I think they're falcons, but they're certainly big birds of prey, and obviously they've got used to humans feeding them, so they dive bomb any humans that come around looking as though they've got food. Like now. And they're big birds, and when they come in at speed they can do some damage if they hit you. And then in the water we've already seen some stingrays, and there's some pufferfish and some sea bream, because it's actually connected to the sea. But I'm just surprised how big some of these fish are. Still in Hagi, come up to the observation point, actually looking primarily for a coffee, but the views up here are great and the cherry blossom is amazing. It's so calm. It'd be lovely here in the summer. But look at this cherry blossom. Beautiful. Let's hope the coffee matches the view.
We then headed over to Kyoto, but on the way we stopped off at an island just off Hiroshima called Itso Kushima. We'd been recommended to go there, and I'm sure at one point it was a very attractive place to visit, but it was just heaving with people, just way too many. So we didn't get the chance to get up to the top of the mountain because the queue for the cable car was too big, and I didn't take many photos, but this is one of the iconic photos that's taken from the island. But as you can see, there were quite a few people milling around. We then headed back for our final stop. So we got the bullet train from Hiroshima, went through Osaka and on to Kyoto. And Kyoto was, I guess, the busiest and most touristy place that we visited. But there were a couple of temples there that were really spectacular. In particular, the one that we're going to have a look at now, which is called Fushimi Inari. And it's also known as the temple with 1,000 torii gates, which are these orange gates and pillars and posts that we're looking at right now.
They said we should get here early to this shrine. Now you understand why. Seething mass of humanity slowly shuffling up the path. Okay, so here we have a very strange situation where people are bending down and crawling through a dead tree stump. But I'm sure it's got some huge significance. Just waiting for Vasi to demonstrate her flexibility. Here she comes. You have to watch your head as you come out. Watch your head, watch your head. Okay. Well done. Do you feel better for that?
I don't know. A challenge for somebody.
So we've been to the top of the mountain and now we're heading down, and every now and then you get these little offshoots, and this is a lovely one in amongst the trees. with all these different shrines, not shines. It actually goes back quite a way into the trees there. But what's nice is there's some areas that are just heaving with people, and then suddenly you get a nice, quiet, tranquil spot like this, which I guess is what it was probably like originally. Meant to be a place of like worship and prayer, as we can see now. But my observation is there's probably about 1% of the people coming up here today that are thinking about that. Into the sun, probably can't see anything, sorry. I have all these little dogs. One carries a ball in its mouth, and the one on this side has a scroll. Everyone's like that. This one's adorned even more than usual. Nice in here, eh? We overheard a guide talking about how these pillars have come about. So this temple is called the Temple of 1,000 Posts or Pillars. And basically each one is paid for like a donation. So you get tiny ones like this, which I think he said cost about $100 US. And then they obviously get more and more expensive depending on how big they are and the positioning within the temple. But he said the more expensive ones, the most expensive ones, cost $100,000 US. And for that you probably get about 5 years life apparently, because they have to be replaced every 5 years or so. And we've seen a few that have actually started to rot and are obviously going to need replacing soon. And when they get replaced, they have to make the donation again. So a lot of the bigger, more expensive ones are corporate contributions, but the smaller ones are lots of individuals that have just made their own donation. So now we've popped out into an opening on the way down, and here's modern Kyoto down below us. And despite the number of people that are up here, I'd much rather be up here than down amongst that, because it's featureless and very uninspiring, like most of the places we've been to in Japan, to be honest. Modern Japan, that is. Okay, we're on what is called the Philosopher's Walk, and as you can see it's pretty popular, primarily because all the cherry blossom is out. And what's interesting is, look what happens when the wind blows. This is what happens to all the cherry blossom heading downstream. Shame it's not a sunny day, but somebody's taking a selfie.
Selfie, yeah.
We just stopped on this bridge just to have a look at all the blossom petals floating down the river. And then down below we just spotted this huge fish in this very small canal. I mean, it's just humongous.
It's feeding on the bottom, whatever it is there. It is big.
So that was the whistle-stop tour of Japan. Probably about half a dozen highlights for me, including the caves and some of the temples. managed also to get some decent coffee at 3 or 4 occasions. But in particular, what I will remember is the food. So, very reasonably priced, good selection of restaurants, and in particular, the sashimi was great. So, I certainly had my fill of raw fish during the visit. And this menu, which fortunately my phone managed to translate for me, had got Wagyu beef. So I took the opportunity to indulge in some Wagyu beef at a price considerably less than it would have cost me in Australia. So that's it for the Japan trip. Thanks for watching.